Hello everyone, from Tony the Scout Ghost. I'm here today. I'm super happy to be here with Kavya Pearlman from XRSI. Hey Kavya, I want to ask you if you can introduce yourself for people that are watching already this interview. I mean, you are a superstar in our environment, but maybe there is still someone that needs a recap about your life.
For sure, Tony, and that's very kind of you to introduce me as a superstar. I think I consider myself more like an information security researcher. I am constantly trying to learn these technologies that are evolving and emerging, and then trying to put a collective, critical perspective on it. So while some of the world is moving fast and kind of trying to innovate without sort of really thinking about consequences. We've kind of taken it upon ourselves. So I started XRSI in 2019 and took it upon myself to bring collective human intelligence to really pay attention to what could possibly go wrong. And then, if something could go wrong, should we proactively think about, hey, there is something that we can do here from a multi-stakeholder perspective to maybe reduce some harm before it happens, potentially mitigate some risk. So that's where you have X reality safety intelligence. We call ourselves human intelligence in the loop. And we really claim like you should really consult with us when you're innovating. And it's been almost 5 years now. And we have been focused on so many issues that are so important for emerging technologies, but we'll dive in later into all that for sure.
Yeah, very cool. And I'm a bit curious, but why privacy and safety in the metaverse? Why you started chasing this goal? I mean, how
Hmm.
your career in this field started?
Yeah, well, I do have to go back to my experience at the very first virtual world, Second Life. But even before that, I think the real interest in the consequences of ignoring the risk was really when I was over at Facebook, which is now Meta, and I was the third party security advisor there. And this was
Wow.
2016 during US presidential election time. I am trying to build a scalable third party safety security model. And we're trying to figure out, like, if somebody comes through the front door, what all they need to be, checked on security wise. So anyhow, that experience of this whole like 2016 election, as everybody saw, there was a lot of, misinformation, disinformation, a lot of these cybersecurity issues came about. It really opened my eyes to what happens when you ignore the risks of is these massive systems that have the potential to influence humanity, democracy, and undermine our elections even. So it was kind of like a shift in my thought process. And right after that, I was hired by Linden Lab, which some of you may know is the creator of Second Life, the very first prototypical metaverse. And this is where the expansion of that perspective happened, where we're not talking about people representing themselves in virtual avatar forms and have the ability to be anonymous, assume any identity, do transactions using virtual currencies. The very first ever virtual currency, Linden Dollar, was also, then you have to comply with money rules, money laundering possibilities. And then when two people come together in the virtual world, especially, they can have all sorts of experiences. Second Life offered tremendous amount of freedom, which included, sexual experiences and all kinds of gaming experiences. And that brings up its own element of challenges and problems. And try explaining that to the regulators. And it's like we had
Yeah.
a revolving doors of regulators. So this was where all of it informed me that our world is moving towards more immersive internet, and now we call it the metaverse. That's kind of still building up and evolving. And that's when I was like, you know what, somebody really needs to think about these issues very carefully, because this is going to impact all of us.
Yeah, and I want to challenge you a bit about the topics about safety and privacy because as a tech guy, I mean, as a developer, you know it very well because we collaborate on a few things that sometimes there are some compromises to make in a way. So let's make an example. You talk about safety in this kind of social worlds like Second Life, but if you put, let's say, too much attention on safety, for instance, since the beginning, to restriction, then people don't feel free to do what they want and they will probably go away from this virtual world because it's even more restrictive than real life. At the same time, if you don't do that, people will start doing sexual harassment, pedophilia, whatever horrible things may happen. How to find this sweet spot between the two things?
Yeah. And I think this is where we are quite unique of a nonprofit. Instead of just saying, don't do this or ban the bill, and we must not do this, we literally are researching technologies to find that balance. So let's take an example. And what you're saying is so important. There are two things here. One is the ability to scale and also ability to like innovate timely, not having too many hurdles. But the second thing is really like allowing multi-stakeholder folks to weigh in on those decisions. So like you're making trade-offs for a billion people, or let's say 100 people that could scale to a billion later on. So when do you introduce safety? What level of safety should you introduce? Instead of saying, hey, let's put all these 60 controls over there so we don't have any problems. That's not the way to build technologies. Because if you put 60 controls and the user is completely stifled to be like, I have to put a safety bubble around me. Oh my God, I can't even connect to the person unless I drop the safety bubble. So the safety and privacy is what I say, it's an art and a science. So you really have to learn the science, the technology, but then there is this art piece where you consult multi-stakeholder experts, which is kind of what XRSI does, is really inform you where those safeguards should be, to what level, and when should they be introduced. From, you have 40 people and it's a closed community, you can pretty much rely on self-moderation. You don't need really like kick, ban, all of this. But when you have about over 1,000 people in an immersive environment, that's when we really need to think about, hey, we've got 5 incidents per day of harassment. I mean, that could really lead to bad reputation. Maybe it's time to think about introducing some of these kick, ban, mute, or other type of safety controls. So this is, again, a balance and then a trade-off. When you make a trade-off, like you can't be completely anonymous and be safe at the same time. Like if you're completely anonymous, that means the safety people have no visibility into what you do. So somebody has to make that trade-off. And when you make that trade-off, some people will be marginalized, like the journalist community or the vulnerable population. And so what we are really trying to do is avoid this broad brush and all these decisions happening just from the company terms and services. That's not the way to go. You have to keep a collective, multi-stakeholder human intelligence in the loop that is informed by the consequences of real deal technology and allow the innovation. It's not like, hey, no, we must do this so that we could stop any issue from happening. We have to allow innovation to happen and introduce the controls timely when it's necessary. So yeah, I think that was a very important question, because most of the times developers really fear you bring in a safety privacy person and they're all like heavy hammer, let's not do this, let's not do that. That's not how we should be approaching these emerging worlds.
Yeah, and by the way, you mentioned the services that XRSI offers, and we as a Vroom, people know that I work at this company making social VR concerts, and we are partner of XRSI, and I can say that your experience has been very valuable. I mean, the advice you give to us has always been very on point and very useful. So that's just want to say that I really appreciate what you do for us and other companies in the field, because that was very valuable advice. And let me do another provocation instead on the privacy sector. So Especially we can see examples now. The hype of everyone is artificial intelligence, and apart from the various Terminator will kill us all things. There is also the problem about the training data. For instance, some people say that, for instance, China may be ahead of other countries just because they have no privacy laws. So basically, big AI companies could scrape all the data, have huge training sets which advance the technology. So sometimes these privacy, safety, and other good values are somehow slowly down, maybe slowing down technology advancement, or anyway preventing something. Also the regulation about AI people are talking about. I mean, if you move fast and break things, like Mark Zuckerberg was used to say, you can be very fast, but of course this has consequences. Again, where is the sweet spot between technology advancement and preserving good life of people?
So I think I missed the last keyword that you said. Where is the balance, you said, between?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think I personally don't have the answer. I really don't know. This is the reason why we are bringing in so many global experts, many governments, many multidisciplinary human rights advocates, child safety advocates, policy people from all around the world to the Metaverse Safety Week. What I do know is, especially concerning artificial intelligence and this economic power disbalance, and one says, hey, let's be very careful. The United States or Europe is like, hey, we need regulation and stuff. On the other side of the planet, these people do not really have that much of a stringent regulation, and they're moving fast. So there is this, could be an economic disbalance that could happen in overall global structures. So I do know that that's happening. We are talking about brain-computer interfaces being able to extract data directly from the brain and then pipe it through augmented reality devices in order to make very quick real life profiling and whatnot. So what I'm personally invested in learning, because I really don't know where the balance is that balance, is that conversation about emerging and immersive technologies and what that should look like. What should the regulation look like in these immersive worlds? What should the regulation look like when our AI, BCI, brain-computer interfaces, augmented reality, virtual reality, all this is converging to create a much more immersive internet where you don't see through the screen, but you interact through avatars. You have industrial metaverse that is building. What should those things, technologically have controls? Should we have robotics controls that converge with generative AI? Because so far we haven't really set the rules of engagement with what are the rules of engagement between human and AI. So these are the perspective problems that we really, I see so many reports, but none is targeting that very emerging evolutionary systems and processes and policies that we need the answer to. And hopefully this is why we have Metaverse Safety Week coming up on 10th to 15th of December. We will have this assembly. We'll do multiple roundtable discussions with some of the top data protection, human rights, all these multi-stakeholder professionals. And maybe, Tony, maybe, if we are lucky, we might have at least some baseline understanding as to where all we should pay attention. We would still not have all the answers, but that's the goal, is to try to find that very answer that you're asking about.
Well, I totally agree. And since you mentioned the Metaverse Safety Week, why don't we speak a bit about it? So, can you repeat maybe when it is happening and what people can expect from it? Also, how to attend it, because that would be very important.
Absolutely. So, Metaverse Safety Week is an annual safety awareness campaign, which is more directed towards these immersive and emerging technologies. It happens every year starting 10th of December, which is Human Rights Day. And then it ends on 15th of December. So it's like a whole week worth of activities. And we invite, all of the communities, governments, global policymakers, mostly target the people who could potentially then take this kind of a concept and tell global citizens, tell their constituents. We ask senators, a couple of years ago, we had Senator Mark Warner talk about how he plans to, provide support for these technologies. Last year, we had U.S. Representative Laurie Trahan. We had E-Safety Commissioner of Australia. So what we're trying to do is we are trying to influence the world leaders, the professional, the organizations like Meta. So week worth of campaign, really trying to create some positive experience around leadership, and then shift some of this leadership responsibility that I've kind of taken upon myself, along with so many of these advisors that we have at XRSI, to really prioritize safety, but not just to build controls. It's from the perspective of how do we build trust? How do we build trust in these environments? So it's a campaign to create safe and positive experience for global citizens. How do we protect vulnerable population? So we divide it into 5 days, different themes, and then invite all of our stakeholders, platform providers, creators, educators, people like you. We are inviting journalists from Washington Post, from various different other outlets that are covering these technologies. And we'll have this unique discussion. We'll have a post roundtable report. So there's something that you can actually take away and it would live on. So this year, it's the most accessible one. It's really, we used to do this in virtual reality where we would host a conference like agenda, but this year it's even more accessible. So we are only doing Zoom events, so we will have 3.5 hours, 3.5 hours discussion every day via Zoom. So anybody from all over the world can log in, they can observe, or if they have something to say, they can also add their voices via chat, etc. We will have pre-approved contributors. We will have some statements from some of these world leaders that I mentioned. So this is going to be fantastic. And again, this will help us answer that question that you raised is, where is the balance? How should we be thinking about all these things?
Okay, that's good. So it means that it's happening via Zoom webinar, something like that. Okay, so
That's
people
right.
can join like that.
Yeah.
How can people find more information about it? Is there a website? I know.
Yes. So the website is www.metaversesafetyweek.org. So metaversesafetyweek.org. There is a very simple roundtable interest form. You can either fill that form and send it. And if you're an organization, you can sponsor. Another form is there, right there, available right there. And then if you are a organization like We Are Room, or a smaller organization, we don't need, we certainly need finances and support and sponsorship, but we don't need to let that be a constraint. Be a community partner. Allow your representatives, send your developers, send people who have something to say or something to learn, and just be a part of the whole overall agenda. There are actually several organizations and governments looking to adopt Metaverse Safety Week as well. So hopefully what we anticipate in the future, that this becomes a global phenomenon, and the responsibility is not XRSI, we just kind of started it and people adopt it, kind of like Cybersecurity National Awareness Month. There are many weekly kind of campaign, privacy, etc. So we even, last year we had the cyber director policy person from the White House. And so it goes to show the reach and the impact is far and wide, and it is targeting specifically the people who will make those policy decisions that will impact global citizens. And hopefully your presence could inform them better instead of us just, few experts. That's the goal. That's the goal. Yeah.
And that's wonderful. And I think that these events are very important because make people speak together, people different points of view, etc. So, and especially many experts in the field that can also inform people like me that are in the XR space but are not expert about privacy and safety. So I really love this event. And one of the things which is important to speak about this is, of course, if we start speaking about, for instance, our future. So uh, there is. Um, there is a lot of talk, for instance, about the new generations, people that will be metaverse native, let's say children. And there is an interesting dichotomy because some There is the problem of adults that sometimes don't want children in the space. On the other side, there is the problem of safety of these children because there are cases of harassment and whatever. So let's start digging into this topic. How do you think is the situation of safety of children in the metaverse?
It's a very profound challenge that we have, and it requires the entire world almost, a lot of us are going to be needed to get this. Um, but yeah, but first of all, we do have a special track. So December 12th is dedicated to child safety and children rights, and it is co-hosted by UNICEF. I couldn't think of a more credible organization to co-organize such a roundtable session where we are inviting, again, people who are involved in preventative policy making, companies that are providing technology like IoT with age-appropriate age assurances kind of technologies. We are inviting certain senators and policymakers from around the globe that are involved in safeguarding children. There are some OECD, which is your Organization for Economic Development and Cooperation. About 38 countries are part of their members. We have Standards Australia. So all of these multi-stakeholder, and like you said, Tony, some of our topics and the focus, as you will notice if you go to the website and look at the agenda, the discussions are really around what do we need to safeguard children from these more of an AI augmented world perspective. And because that conversation I earlier said, the artificial intelligence conversations are happening, but we're not talking about what that impact is on the emerging realities. And so how do we safeguard children? Children are not just going to be venturing into these wars. They're going to create these wars. They're also going to interact with AI chatbots, artificial intelligence beings, etc. So whose responsibility should it be? When these emerging playgrounds are the place where you have children hanging out, how do we prevent harm and enable opportunities for young people? So those are the type of discussions. And then, kind of making a call to action on that very day to everybody, to parents, to guardians, to big tech companies, and we'll have representatives from Meta policy team, to policymakers, to how are we going to safeguard? And currently the approach to lawmaking is generally when the harm happens, then you can kind of seek some reward to hey, I need to be compensated. But this is different. We need to be preventative. I'm going to, cite Julian Mann-Grant. I mean, she's a huge advocate of she's the Australian e-safety commissioner. She talks about safety by design. And Australia is kind of leading that safety by design conversation and leadership. And that's what needs to happen. So on that day, we will be able to dive into these very perspective. One other unique thing, Tony, and I think you will appreciate this one, during entire Metaverse Safety Week on each day, we would also do something called a Swarm AI intelligence gathering. So from anyone who is attending, any contributor, observer, we would actually open up some questions. We will raise some targeted questions, and the multi-stakeholder input will be received through a Swarm AI exercise, which is basically collecting input from a group to understand what is the, what should be the ideal response, what does the group want. So it would be very interesting. This is the first time ever we would use this sort of a Swarm AI from the context of making decisions around metaverse safety or children's safety in the metaverse or human rights in the metaverse. So I'm really excited about that part. And then all those results would go right into that post roundtable report where everyone who contributes would also be cited and attributed. So it's a remarkable kind of agenda, very unique. We are kind of always using technology to experiment it towards the solution. So this is yet another experiment that I'm so looking forward to.
Well, that's very exciting. And continuing the discussion about children, for instance, and sometimes people say like, what kind of world are we leaving to our children? We'll say also what kind of virtual world are we leaving to our children, because of course there will be now this always more continuous mix of different realities and different intelligences. So everything will be more fluid in a way between the real and the digital. And do you think that is there a way, because there is a lot of talking about dystopian features, the video by Keiichi Matsuda, all the movies like Terminator and things like that. Is there a way we can escape from that, in your opinion, or we are doomed because the moment there is cameras everywhere on our face and AI controlling us, it can't end well. So I know it's a kind of uh, weird prediction to ask, but what Kavya thinks about that? I'm very curious.
Yeah. So I'm actually waiting to receive my Meta Stories glasses so that I could, kind of
Wow.
capture some of these moments and of course from a research perspective, uh, the one specific thing that is possible, it is absolutely possible to find the balance. And we don't have to say no technology, ban the technology. We just have to really establish trust. If we can trust, like, I remember when the first version of Meta Stories glasses was launched, I was actually in Milan and I was
Oh,
mugged twice. And right then I was like, damn, where are those AR glasses when you need it the most? And even when I went to the police to inform them that my phone is lost, it was like 10 o'clock, these police people in Milan, and I have an actual documented article on this. So somebody afterwards interviewed me, and I literally talked about this. Like, they literally said they can't help me, and I was like, "Here's my phone. I can see it. You can come with me, and we can catch the thief." And they wouldn't help me. Next day, they denied it. And next they
what?
said, "Oh no, you were never here, or I never said anything." And so I got the police chief. And then I'm thinking all this while as personal experience. I'm originally from India. And so like I spent 23 years, in India, growing up as a female in India. Safety was a real challenge. You could take one wrong turn and end up like in a really bad situation. So I'm thinking during these time when the glasses were launched, like, man, this could be a lifesaver. I was like looking down, we could be a heads up society. We're currently like heads down
Yeah.
society, and we're just like zoomed into that information. With the correct kind of design, we could actually gain the sense of awareness around us. We could actually record the moments that are really critical. Like, think about Rodney King, James Floyd, like those type of video recordings. If they didn't exist, there would be no revolution around those things. So there is a
Yes.
very crucial aspect of safety that is actually enhanced with the use of these technologies. The only question that we have to really establish is like, where is the balance between oversharing, not sharing, and who makes those decisions? So let's go back to stories classes. Why can't the contextualized AI have information and make that decision that this is a bathroom, don't record. This is a bedroom, don't record. We do that with Roomba. We draw boundaries like, hey, these are the boundaries, stay in that. And you could kind of teach that. Like with VR, we have safety boundaries. We create
Yep.
that. So in these immersive realities, which is inevitable, we got to utilize the artificial intelligence algorithm to inform based on my preferences. I don't prefer to record my kitchen. I don't prefer to record the bedroom. I don't prefer to record the bed. Nobody does. So like private spaces could remain private. But we got to be able to trust the device, the company that's making it, their terms and use and policy. And that's why we're sitting with them. That's why we're trying to find that balance. Because if we're not involved, if we don't do this, those decisions will be made. They will be made by the people who either don't care or they simply don't understand. And that's why, this unique role of XRSI is we've got to first understand the technology, then we got to inform them critically where is the right balance. Another example I will give you is remember when Meta kind of mandated the login ID? So like mandating login ID, a federated ID for like over the course of time, it's going to be billions of people using these devices. That's so wrong. And so I personally was like talking in amongst, a closed door conversation. I had said to Nick Clegg, this is unacceptable. And at that point, one of their privacy policy person was like, hey, we have to find the balance. And I said, sure, let's find the balance, but we have to find the balance together. We have to not ignore the minorities, like people like me, whose identity, once lost, it's a dangerous world. If I step into certain demographics, certain countries like Iran, China, or even India for that matter, I'm a Muslim convert. So like there is like several identity, cultural, all these issues that could really put people of color, people of minority, and different demographics at risk. So that's the goal. Hopefully we are on the track to establishing that, to figuring out how can we use these technologies to not just like say, no, I don't want this, or I don't want technology in my life, but instead embracing it with trust. Like, oh, I can actually trust this company. So that would be ideal if we can reach that.
Yeah, that will be great. Of course, it's difficult to trust after many problems that happened in the past with some of the companies that are working in the field. So let's see how things will turn out to be. I want to do a little jump in the past with you. You said you were working on Linden Labs during the Second Life hype and consequent success. Because anyway, even if now Second Life is not the newest of the metaverse platforms, it still have a kind of good number of very passionate people in its community. And there are some people that started at that time working with metaverse, like you, like others, that say that now we are like forgetting the errors that we did in the past. They were kind of repeating them and redoing some kind of the same story instead of evolving over it. Do you have the same impression? And if yes, in your opinion, what lessons should we still learn from the Second Life past?
Wow. And that's the question that I asked on my day one when I went into Linden Lab. So I have to say, I'm not one of those early pioneers. I came in around right after 2016. I mean, it's still kind of early for some people, but that's when GDPR was getting introduced in 2018.
Yeah.
And I remember what a nightmare that was. And so even though I wasn't, but on day one, well, I created my Twitter account, Maya of Sansar and stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this is a platform with 16 years of completely unique legacy. I need to be like a sponge and learn all that has gone wrong. Like they had like 4chan, 8chan kind of reputational issues. They had like really messy situation happen. And it's kind of like it was like a fertile ground for experimentation, for like extreme inclusivity. What happens? Like people are furries, people are, they're cats, they're dogs, they're doing, something called as age play, which is like a borderline pedophilia almost. Like, there was just this complex issues from cultural, from policy, from technology perspective. And simple example, like, people are sharing links, for example, cybersecurity wise, like they're sharing malicious links. So a link that is validated through our system would have a completely different color. So we would use different technology to indicate, hey, what's a safe link? So within the chat in the real time, how do you know if it's a safe link or not? So we would kind of run through the system. And so these are like unique issues that I was there to learn. And the one thing that I can share, and I realized working on even their VR platform, Sansar, was like, we have to slice and dice these things. We can't broad brush. We also have to contextualize these issues. So like something that applies to a platform that's a social VR may necessarily not apply to a platform that is used for medical treatment, and even what kind of, like a surgical treatment, maybe a training simulation, so different aspects have to different apply to different contexts. So there was so much to learn, and there still is from Second Life. There is a framework that some of the product people, and we kind of started to think about this problem. Personally, for me, I had to think about how to deal with this revolving door of regulators. So what kind of a safety, privacy policy, cybersecurity controls should we apply when we connect? So that's like a social element. It's completely different. What happens is disinformation, misinformation. People will be harassing each other in real time. People will have biases against each other, like those different issues. But when you create, and you're just creating a model and stuff, somebody could introduce a malicious script. The risks are different. So when you create, risks are different. When you connect with people, risks are different. But then when you introduce the element of money, commerce, then you have money laundering, then you have microtransaction, then you have all these other issues. So we actually, this I started at Linden, but this has kind of become a concept that I kind of evolved further together with XRSI advisors and our community. Now we have the privacy safety framework, which is kind of like using that foundation. And even the definition of metaverse, that's what I say, is like we got to have these ethos, standards, policies, etc. We got to secure the infrastructure. We got to secure the component of create. We got to secure the component of connect. All of these things are actually, they've been really informative in how to approach these worlds. Slice and dice them, contextualize them, use the technology to make those decisions, and bring multi-stakeholder folks to make decisions around terms and policies, etc. Yeah, it's everybody should actually be studying those years of data, pretty much research, if they haven't.
Yeah, and one last question is about how do you imagine the future? I mean, if you could shape it, how would you imagine the metaverse in maybe 15 years from now?
Oh my gosh. I tried to avoid the future question. I even tried to
Okay.
avoid this whole like futurist label and stuff. But in a perfect world, the one thing that I would like to foresee is that our ability to trust these technologies and the companies that are making them. So hopefully in the future, I wake up with my AR glasses instead of my looking down through my phone. Automatically it knows I wake up, I always check the weather. It should inform me what the weather is, and what kind of clothes I want to wear today, etc. So just a super intelligent system that I can sort of immerse myself without even once worrying about where is my data going to end up. Is somebody going to create a awful avatar of Kavya Pearlman and turn it into some kind of pornography or something? It might happen. And if it does, I know that just like, we can trust our credit cards. And like, if something bad happens with our credit cards, I simply just call the company and be like, hey, I lost that much money, and they just waive it off. The American Express simply does that like that. So that much of a trust that, I have a relationship with this company and it's going to take care of me. I'm not just a user or a consumer that is being exploited for data, but it's really being nurtured and cared for. And then I'm going to, my child, which is, lastly, like, honestly, I mean, this is, I'm just about to make the LinkedIn announcement about this personal news that I have. Like, I am now 7 months pregnant and soon going to
Wow.
bring a whole,
Compliment.
thank you, human consciousness into this emerging world. So talk about safeguarding the future, or that vision of future. It just got a little bit more personal to me. And because of it, I would like to see where my child is learning and have opportunities, is engaging with technology and feel safe just by design. And hopefully that's the future that I anticipate. And that's why I'm so invested in making sure that that's the future we have once it is actually fully materialized.
Oh, that's beautiful. Compliments again for this beautiful announcement. I'm very happy for you. So apart
Thank
from
you.
all the speak about technology, this the human life is always fascinating. And I have just one last question. This is the usual one I ask at the end of every interview is whatever else you want to say. I mean, if there is something that you didn't come out during this interview, but you really want to say to people that are watching this video, it's your time to say whatever you want.
Thank you for that. And I think I said it enough, but I can never say it enough is to get engaged. When we talk about this Metaverse Safety Week campaign, we talk about the very existence of XRSI. It is to involve people, inform people, and to get them engaged in helping shape the future that we want to live in. We don't want a future that is only built by the tech bros. We don't want the future that's built by VCs. We want the future that's built by all of us that come from various different backgrounds, even including children. So that would be my, one call to action is just don't roll your eyes and throw your hands up in the air. There is certainly hope in getting invested in trying to safeguard our future. There is certainly purpose in that. And if you feel, this purpose resonates with you, then right now go to xrsi.org and sign up to be a volunteer, to be a supporter, to do anything that you can to inform us, to engage with us. And that's what I'd say, Tony. Thank you so much for all this wonderful discussion. As always, love talking to you and hope to see you IRL sometime soon.
Yeah, the same for me. I really hope to meet you maybe next year in the US. And really, thanks for this beautiful interview. And thanks also to everyone that has followed this. And as Kavya said, apart from just watching this, please take action with us to try to shape a better metaverse or however you want to call our future. Have a good day, everyone. Bye bye.